So if this was all our tables could do, we'd be pretty limited. Luckily, they're quite flexible. Now, you've still got a limited amount of space, but let's see a couple of the other things we can do with them. In my interface builder, I'm going to select the table view, and for the attributes of it in my inspector, I'm going to change it from plain to grouped. What that will do, if I just click off to make it a little more visible, is it shifts to different groups in the table view with the kind of blue striped background and rounded corners in each of the groups. Now, what I really need to do is do a little more work in Xcode to support the idea of having that table view containing grouped elements, but you'll see this kind of look is actually very common. So I'm just going to change this back for one moment to the plain view and save that, and I'm going to bring up the sample Xcode project. Now what I have here is I've made a few different changes to this simple table. I have implemented the method number of sections in table view and said I'm going to return 6. And the reason that I'm going to do this is I'm going to start breaking down these exercises by their groups: chest, shoulders, abs, back, that kind of thing. So I've made a few simple changes, and then let's go through the changes to support this. First one, I'm saying the number of sections in table view is 6. Now I've got a little thing I'm going to uncomment in a moment. And then I've got another method called title for header in section. So it's passing in the sections. I said there were 6 sections, and I'm basically just doing a very simple if statement. If it's section 0, return chest. Section 1, return shoulders. Section 2, return back, and so on. Then, because you're splitting it up into sections, have to do a little more work. You could potentially be loading the sections from different data sources, different arrays, for example. But what I'm doing a little bit further down is the next method, saying, okay, if you say you're going to have 6 sections, and you say that they have different titles, how many rows are in each section? So again, this has to return an integer. In my case, I'm manually doing it. I could, of course, have been loading things into arrays and going with multiple array counts or some other source, but I'm just manually doing it for our purposes here. And then the only thing that still happens is, of course, we still have on line 5253 is where our method starts to select the correct cell for the correct row. And the only change that I've had to make in that one is because I'm pulling them all from one big list, I need to make sure that the offset is correct based on the different sections. So if it's looking for the ones for the shoulder exercises, that it jumps ahead 6 points, that kind of thing. So I'm going to save that and run this just so you get an idea of what the end effect of this ends up being. Because we've defined different sections in here, we have chest, which contains the chest exercises, shoulders contain the shoulder exercises, back, and that's all split up. Now this is still considered the plain look of the interface. If I wanted to go back into Interface Builder and switch that to the grouped look, save that file, come back and rerun it again, what we'd see very similarly is all of these exercises grouped into the correct groupings, but they're in white rounded rectangles with the blue background, and we can just start moving up and down through them. So there's a little more work involved when you're doing that, but it's really all back to that idea of what are the methods that you're going to implement of the data source. And again, if I flick back to my header file and then option double click on the table view data source to bring them up, we can start to see that there are several different methods in our table view data source that allow us to say how many sections do we have, number of rows in sections, what are the titles for the sections, if we want to do it, what are the footers for the sections, that kind of thing. You can start to control this to start grouping how your interface is going to look. And bear in mind, if I run that once again where it's grouped, this is the kind of look that's not only used for presenting data, but people build interfaces off this kind of look. Things like the settings application, a lot of preference applications are created this way, and they lead into a kind of hierarchical presentation where something would be selected and that would shift us to another screen. So that would be a starting point for that as well. Now the only other thing worth mentioning here, which I had commented out in my code, is that we also have the ability to create section titles on the right hand side. Perhaps the most common example of this would be in the contacts application, where if we look at the contacts application, we get the row of letters up and down the side. We can do this ourselves, and the way that we do it is by, not surprisingly, implementing yet another method, which is section titles for table view, and this has to return an array of strings. So all I'm doing in this is supporting this method. I'm creating an array called section titles and then initializing it with 6 string objects, chest, shoulders, back, abs, legs, and arms, and then returning that. Now, this is not necessarily what you do because it's going to give you quite a long-looking index, but as I run this, you'll see that we have the index kind of appearing over here talking about the different sections, and it's smart enough to know that if I, for example, click the abs one, it's going to jump to that section, or to shoulders, or down to arms, that it will help me match up my sections with the different groupings that I've created in showing my data. So this is the ability to group your content into sections by implementing more methods of the UI table view data source.